All it took was one accusation. Rachel Zegler went completely off the hook, and this time, nobody could save her. For several months, she has been bent on jeopardizing her own career, with one controversy after the next. However, it seems like The Simpsons might have been the final straw in the saga of Rachel's acting career, because they're not joking around this time. So, get this. Allegedly, The Simpsons is about to drop an episode that doesn't just take a jab at Rachel Zegler, it absolutely roasts her to a crisp. Forget playful nudges or cheeky references, this one goes all in with no filter and zero hesitation. The episode's title is SnowWoke the Reimagining, and trust me, they're not even pretending to be subtle about who the target is. The storyline is a scorched earth version of Snow White, twisted into a full-blown parody with a character that looks, acts, and rants exactly like Rachel smack in the center of the chaos.
Excuse me, your curtain. Please allow me to help.
Help? From you? Spare me your white savior complex.
I didn't mean to offend. I just thought you should know that
That I should know what? That some privileged white guy thinks his opinion matters? Get over your entitlement. I'm not some damsel in distress waiting for you to ride in on your high horse.
I'm really sorry. I was just trying to be kind.
Kind? If you want to be kind, disappear and take the patriarchy with you.
The internet is already on fire, not just because it's kind of hilarious in that brutal way, but because this feels like a cultural moment, a massive animated side-eye from the public to someone who, not that long ago, was being crowned the future of Hollywood. But how did things even get to this point? Rachel Zegler's name has been flying around lately, like popcorn in a microwave, and not necessarily in a good way. Word on the street is that her off-screen energy might have actually made Disney slam the brakes on their marketing campaign for Snow White. Yes, that's how loud the chatter got. And just when you think it's all Twitter drama, wait till you hear about the ice-cold tension between Rachel and her co-star, Gal Gadot. Things got extra frosty during their Oscar appearance, and it turns out that chilly moment wasn't just an awkward fluke. It was the tip of a much deeper behind-the-scenes iceberg. One source, speaking with People, dropped a mini-bomb. Disney's Golden Girl was, quote, out of control. Apparently, studio execs tried everything, from dialing her up personally to getting her management on the phone, to convince her to tone it down. But Rachel wasn't having it. She was speaking her mind from the very beginning of filming. And the thing that really sent the house spinning was how closely she linked her political stance with a legacy character like Snow White. That, they claimed, was the real issue. And if you think Gal Gadot was just floating above the drama like a serene goddess, think again. Another insider spilled that while Gal wasn't exactly beefing with Rachel, the vibe between them was strictly professional. So they filmed, they smiled, and that was that. There were no friendly texts, no shared playlists, and nothing in common but a production schedule. Gal, the source said, had a great time filming and didn't want the drama. But Rachel's off-camera headlines weren't part of the package deal she signed up for. But before you go imagining Rachel backing down and fading quietly into the background, think again. She told Variety in one interview that she saw this backlash coming from miles away. She spent her entire life watching women get torn apart in the media, and she wasn't shocked when it was her turn under the microscope. She even drew parallels with how female politicians get treated, especially during election cycles, and admitted it felt like society was in reverse gear sometimes. But here's the part where she flips the script. Instead of running away from the criticism or taking a breather from the spotlight, Rachel said she refuses to give her haters that satisfaction. Her reasoning is that the moment she disappears from social media, they win, they get to feel powerful, and she's not letting that happen. So what exactly did she say or do that caused such a digital stampede? Let's rewind the timeline and take it from the top, because chaos kept raining down on Disney, one misstep after the other. Back in June of 2021, when the casting news first dropped, some corners of the internet erupted in fury over Rachel's skin tone not matching the as white as snow line from the classic tale. Now, most people would have ignored the noise, but Rachel clapped back. In a now-deleted tweet, she wrote, "Yes, I am Snow White. No, I am not bleaching my skin for the role." She also thanked those who supported her and reminded everyone, especially the kids out there, that anyone can be a princess, no matter their background. All of this was enough to launch another round of outrage. Then came September 2022, when Rachel stirred the pot again, this time with a little truth bomb about the original Snow White. During an interview at Disney's D23 Expo, she didn't hold back. She pointed out that the original film, released way back in 1937, was obviously a product of its time.
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love.
She highlighted how Snow White's love interest in the cartoon essentially stalks her, which she rightfully called weird.
Yeah.
Weird.
Naturally, this didn't sit well with traditionalists. Blogger Matt Walsh and his like-minded crowd jumped in immediately, accusing Disney of trying to market a movie by bashing the original. Fast forward to August of 2024, and things really started heating up. Disney dropped the long-awaited Snow White trailer and racked up over 120 million views within 24 hours. Rachel posted a thank you note to fans on X, expressing gratitude for the love and explaining she'd be signing off to focus on her role in Romeo and Juliet. But here's where the twist came in. Right in that same thread, she added, "And always remember, free Palestine." Now, Rachel had been vocal about supporting the Free Palestine movement even before the Gaza conflict reignited global attention. But this shout-out came at a particularly tense moment. And considering her co-star Gal Gadot is Israeli and a former IDF soldier who's publicly supported her country's military actions, the timing hit like a thunderclap. The contrast between Rachel's message and Gal's known stance created a quiet storm that insiders say rattled the entire production. Apparently, the reaction was swift. Variety reported that producer Mark Platt even flew in from New York to have a face-to-face with Rachel.
They flew an executive, one of the producers, out to go visit personally with Rachel Zegler to say, could you please take that down? Because we understand you can have your political views, but those aren't really helpful while you're trying to build an audience for a movie. Maybe you could save them for like your diary and your friends, but like maybe not, maybe just take the tweet down. And she wouldn't. And then they had to hire a special media consultant for her to follow her around all the time and make sure she didn't continue shitting on Snow White.
He urged her to pull back on the political posts, stressing how these statements weren't just personal, they had repercussions. They affected the film's image, its international rollout, and yes, even Gal's comfort level on the press tour. But according to sources, Rachel didn't seem to grasp the full weight of how her public voice could ripple through the very industry she was rising in, and Rachel wasn't done yet. In November 2024, emotions were running wild, timelines were blowing up, and right in the middle of it all was Rachel Zegler, who has never exactly been shy about her political stance. She shared a post that said she was speechless in the midst of this and braced herself for another 4 years of hatred. But it didn't stop there. She threw in a reference to a now-deleted Tumblr post by musician Ethel Cain, talking about the ugly consequences of the election. And then she dropped the line that truly set the internet on fire. May Trump supporters and Trump voters and Trump himself never know peace. Yep, she went all in. Now, you can imagine what happened next. Conservative Twitter had a meltdown, Republican circles were fuming, and the Trump fans were sharpening their boycott hashtags. But the one who really came in swinging was none other than political commentator Megyn Kelly, who basically went scorched earth. She called Rachel a pig on air, said Disney needed to recast again, and brought up Gina Carano's firing like it was a courtroom exhibit.
Hello, Disney, you're going to have to redo your film again because this woman is a pig and you fired Gina Carano for far less than this nonsense.
According to her, Disney was applying double standards, and Rachel had crossed a line even Carano hadn't touched. And just when it seemed like the drama couldn't escalate further, boom, Rachel posted an apology. But it wasn't the fiery kind of response people were expecting. It was more like a carefully polished PR draft straight from the Notes app. In an Instagram story, she said, "Hi everyone, I would like to sincerely apologize for the election post I shared on my Instagram last week." She explained how her emotions got the better of her, especially in what she described as an emotional week for many. And then she closed it with the classic line about respecting differing opinions and wanting to contribute to a better tomorrow. You know, the kind of thing that feels less like an apology and more like damage control.
I never want it to come off as me being ungrateful for the opportunities I have. I can also be having the greatest time and simultaneously wishing people would stop sending me death threats.
Fast forward to March 21st, 2025. And Rachel's Instagram carousel post had people raising eyebrows all over again. But this time, it wasn't about politics. She posted a heartwarming tribute to the cast and crew of Snow White, talking about how the film had defined her early 20s. She reflected on turning 21 during filming, living across the ocean from her family, and making lifelong friendships. But here's the twist. Gal Gadot, her co-star, was not mentioned. It was like she had vanished from Rachel's entire memory of the production. So, of course, fans and gossip blogs alike immediately immediately jumped into detective mode. Was it shade? Was it an accident? Or was it the not-so-subtle confirmation that the icy tension between Gal and Rachel was very, very real? But if you think the controversy only surrounded Rachel Zegler, think again. Back in October 2016, everything was going well. Disney decided it was finally time to dig deep into the vault, blow the dust off their very first princess, and give Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs a live-action reboot. The Hollywood Reporter spilled the tea first, revealing that Erin Cressida Wilson, the same woman behind The Girl on the Train, was in talks to write the script. And to make sure the soundtrack wasn't giving grandma's lullabies, they brought in Benj Pasek and Justin Paul to cook up some fresh tunes. Plus, with Mark Platt producing, things were already looking more Broadway glam than Woodland Cottage. Fast forward to June 2021, and Rachel Zegler landed the role of Snow White. This led to the outrage that we talked about earlier. But then, in November 2021, the cast list got even spicier, as Gal Gadot was announced as the evil queen. Despite her being fresh off Red Notice, where she was basically a glamorous action con artist, she was now stepping into the role of the ultimate mirror-obsessed villainess. It was random, but weirdly perfect at the same time. But things took a sudden turn in January 2022, when Peter Dinklage, who had zero chill and even less patience for nonsense, dropped some heavy criticism on the entire project. While chatting on Mark Maron's WTF podcast, Dinklage called the remake a backwards story and didn't hold back. He said he found it wildly hypocritical that Disney was proudly waving their diversity flag over casting a Latina Snow White, yet still telling a story about seven dwarfs living in a cave together. Disney, clearly scrambling to control the fire, issued a formal statement less than 2 weeks later. They told The Hollywood Reporter they were reimagining the seven characters altogether and were consulting with the dwarfism community to avoid falling back on outdated tropes. But that wasn't the end of it. By January 28th, just days later, other voices from the dwarfism community came forward, and not everyone agreed with Dinklage.
And Hugh Grant is now playing an Oompa Loompa. So I guess, Hugh Grant, you're now identifying as a little person. Oh, okay. Interesting.
WWE's Hornswoggle, aka Dylan Postal, told the Daily Mail that Dinklage's comments were actually doing more harm than good, since they were potentially wiping out one of the few opportunities available for actors with dwarfism. Katrina Kemp, known from Netflix Glow, echoed that frustration, saying it was a huge missed chance to create meaningful, intentional roles for little people. So now Disney was stuck between a rock and a very vocal, very divided community debate, with critics on all sides pointing fingers and demanding answers.
The amount of, like, if it ain't broken, don't fix
Break
it.
it.
Leave it the alone. Yeah, that's it. If it ain't broke, break it. Like, leave these stories alone. By the way, if she never opened her mouth and she didn't do all this nonsense, people would have gone and watched the movie. They would have made their money, but then people would have been disappointed after the math. Like, why are you talking? Like,
Then on January 31st, just when things were starting to cool off, Rachel Zegler finally addressed the elephant in the room. During her Variety Actors on Actors interview with Andrew Garfield, she admitted she never thought playing Snow White would even be an option for someone like her. Growing up, she didn't see girls who looked like her in fairy tale roles, even though the story of Snow White, aka Blanca Nieves, is a huge cultural staple in many Spanish-speaking countries. She explained how the moment her casting got announced, it exploded online and stayed trending for days. Not because people were excited, but because so many were angry, which, let's be honest, says way more about the internet than it does about her. So now, between the casting outrage, the dwarfism debate, and the constant media noise surrounding every step of production, Snow White was no longer just a classic remake. It had become a full-blown cultural war zone, with Disney stuck in the middle and Rachel Zegler walking through fire.